like to call to order the July 13th, 2021 regularly scheduled meeting of the Johnson City Regional Planning Commission. And I'd like to begin the meeting by having the invocation led by our Vice Chairman and then followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me. Dear Lord, help us this evening to hear each other's concerns, to understand each other's issues, and to make sure that we make decisions that are in the best interest of our community as a whole. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. And before we approve it, I just want to do a quick show of hands. I always like to try to get as many people out of here as quickly as I can. If you were here for the Browns Mill Road rezoning, would you raise your hand, please? All right, y'all deserve to be number one. Riverview Drive rezoning, thank you. Optimist Park, or I don't think anybody is going to speak. Willow Springs, final plat? Yes? Okay. And our text amendment changes to the MS1. Okay. All right, with that said then, I am looking for an approval of the agenda as is, since the majority of the people are here for the first item on the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda, please.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next is the approval of the minutes of the June 8th, 2021 meeting. Those minutes have been distributed. Were there any additions, deletions, or corrections on the minutes? Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I move we approve the minutes as submitted. Second.
And we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, there's no old business on the agenda, so we'll begin with the first item of new business, and that is rezoning number 1078 at 2803 Browns Mill Road. And we'll let Whitney do the presentation for us, please.
Good evening. I'm always not a fan of, we'll get the mouse working. This request on Browns Mill Road is located kind of across the street from Swanee Drive. I feel like most of us are familiar with what we're talking about, but there are some pictures in here as well. Just wanted to show you what is around it and what's zoned around it. It is R3 currently. What they're asking for is R4. There is some kind of attached homes here, and then to the south, there are some apartments. First, let's talk about the density, because I think that's one of the reasons, kind of the impetus of the request, is to go from this medium density residential, because R3 does allow for apartments, to a medium density residential, but it does increase in that number of density. So R3 is at 7 units an acre. R4 is at 14 units an acre. What they would like is 12 units an acre. And just to give you an example, to the north, that is 9.9 units an acre, and to the south is 5.8, just to kind of give you a comparison. Now, there is, as we continue on, and this is just what that looks like.
Could you go back one, Whitney?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I don't know how to do that.
Which of those specific pictures are they?
This is the ones on Hazel Street, and then these are the ones on Browns Mill. These are the Browns Mill apartments.
Okay, so which are, these are the 9.9
These
units per
are
acre?
the 9.9,
Yes,
and these are the
5.8.
5.8.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
We'll probably come back to this map many times, but I just wanted to give you a vicinity map of noting that there is single family around it, some vacant land on Swanee Drive, and then the commercial of Roan Street. you've got across the interstate, and then as we all know that, Browns Mill is kind of, and this section of Browns Mill is bookend by kind of some intersections, some interesting intersections. Now, the concept plan. What you have in your packet and what was shown, all the buildings look the same. Nothing has changed with that. After the neighborhood meeting, the developer would like to go back to the 120 units, which I'm going to explain the difference. I'm going to come back to that, but I'm going to hit all these other points first. So there will be they are maintaining a sidewalk on Browns Mill Road. They're going to keep these trees and preserve those so that won't be as much of a kind of a jostle. One of the things when they originally had a plan, they had the parking up front, and so we suggested that they put the building more towards the front to kind of line up with some of those single-family homes, so that you're kind of having a similar streetscape as you're coming from I like to say down Browns Mill Road, but that's just the direction I go. It could be the other way. And then all of these buildings were 3 stories. What staff recommended was that beside these and beside where some of these single-family homes, at least this one building here be 2-story. And that is where the 112 units came into. And, but they still really wanted 120 units. Now, you could take the 3-bedroom, we're gonna get there, 1 second. I'm gonna come back to that. One of the other things that we asked for was this pedestrian path. 1, because it breaks up the parking. 2, it's a way that pedestrians can the residents here can safely get there. And then another thing that they had their trash area kind of up towards front, and we moved that to more centralized. Okay, now we get to the buildings. I got ahead of myself. So I talked about how staff had said, just to kind of soften some of this, put this building at 2 stories. Because here is the breakdown of what they're proposing. It's 36 1-bedrooms, 62 bedrooms, and 24 3-bedrooms. So sometimes with the 3-bedrooms, they always wanted 120 units, and they were going to try to figure it out. With this will, just so that you know, they will have 227 parking units, and that's what they're proposing. It is the table and the height are different than the plan that was in your packet, but everything else is the same. Picture shows, just in case you just was looking at these. This is where most of the building is going to take place. One thing, I'm going to go back, is that with this site, the density of any development is going to have to be on the high end, because this over here, as you can tell, is pretty rocky, and the topo make it harder to build in Johnson City. We're going to get to some transportation concerns. So, and we'll probably talk about this a lot tonight. But just to kind of give you, where they have their entrance, it is going to be across the street from this particular house. There we have our engineering department will talk to you more about Browns Mill Road and its capacity if you have questions. But, one of the things that was mentioned at the neighborhood meeting is that, we've got this rock area coming up. I mean, it's been there for a very long time, since the road was created. But what we have is a concept plan. So in a concept plan, we have things that, as staff, when we make recommendations, this is how we're making our recommendation. So we are coming along with, does it meet as far as uses, buffers, buildings, locations, and then any additional information. So we have this current use of vacant. It's been farmland for many years, maybe at least 100 or 2, or just vacant. And in our future land use, it calls for it to be residential. And that is a little ambiguous. It could be anything in residential. And as we looked at this, we looked at, we've got some density to the north and the south. We also have a interstate that is adjacent. We have this precarious, well-loved Browns Mill Road, and then it's in close proximity to commercial. And it's a little bit of an infill development. And one of the things that we have said as a community is that we are looking for more housing and different types of housing and places to provide that housing. As a legislative recommending body, that's kind of where you get to decide how that also looks. But these are the policies that come out of the bridge plan and the strategic plan that do encourage different types of housing. So you know that property is about 10 acres. There was a neighborhood meeting. I did not put all the things that happened in the neighborhood meeting like I've done in the past because I have a feeling of that they have been emailed and they will speak for themselves. But the main concerns were traffic and congestion on a road that they feel is not adequate for 12 units an acre. That's going to be the main thing, but I don't want to overspeak them. Staff does recommend approval. Probably doesn't make me friends with a lot of people, but reason being is that this is an area where in the grand scheme of things, let's go back to the vicinity map. That's probably better. In the big picture, density can happen if we're looking to do infill density in certain places. There is going to be development pressure for this area. And whatever you decide to recommend, I would strongly encourage to also include what it is if you wanted to see because this and other parcels will develop is the best way to say that at some point, as they have all along Brownsmill Road. I am here for questions because I'm sure we have plenty.
So incrementally, the density between what's the present zoning and what the developer is proposing is how many additional per acre?
5.
5 additional residents per acre.
Yes.
So it's
Units, yeah.
units, yeah, excuse me, yes, units.
Could you go back one other slide? I don't remember if it's back or forward. The one that shows all the zoning around it, the current zoning. That one. Okay, what is the density permitted in RP3 and R2A currently?
I'm gonna have to look at my experts over here who can
Sorry, I'm just trying to get perspective.
RP3 and R2.
Yeah.
R2 doesn't have a density.
It's I was gonna say that it's a lot size. so,
Okay.
yeah. R2A is 15,000. Am I right? Did I? Or is that 2? 3 and 4/10 dwelling units per acre.
Is that RP3?
That's RP.
I'm sorry, that's RP2. RP3 is 8 1/2.
8 and 1/2.
8 1/2.
8 1/2. Okay.
You said R3 was
7.
7. Okay.
So R,
And R4 is 14, but they're only asking.
They're
for
only
12.
asking for 12.
but if we would approve it to R4, then should this development fall through or something, that 12 units per acre would carry with the property, correct?
Yes, when you approve a concept plan, unless they came in and asked you to amend the concept
Or,
plan.
I'm sorry, 14 units.
Because
per-
of
If this developer, if something happened, if tonight we approve the change to R4, and then this development fell through, that property would remain R4?
But the concept plan stays with it. So the R12, sorry, not R12.
So the 12 units per
12
acre
units per
would
acre
be the
still
limit?
hold. They'd still have to change the concept plan.
Okay.
That could be doable.
That
But it could be-
So
yeah.
another developer could come in the
Could
future
come in and
put
ask, yes.
14 units.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I wanted to
It's not,
understand.
there's still a step to it. It's not like it's not that they could just go without anybody else's approval.
Understand. Thank you.
It's bound by the concept plan.
Okay. All right. Are there other questions of staff?
Question for staff. Whitney, what work has been done or what analysis has been done on the traffic flow? Please.
I would really like to let Mr. Penzola speak to this, because they've done a lot more than I know about.
I don't think I've seen anybody here, but hi.
Good evening.
We've looked at the
What's your
transportation.
Could you please state your name and address for the record?
We looked at this development in particular as it relates to traffic. Sure. And there are, and we looked at it from different perspectives to make sure that we're consistent as it relates to the development. If the development is 120 units, that's typically, according to the manual, generates about 6 trips per day, I believe, per unit. So that's about 700 trips a day. Sounds like a lot. The road itself is about 2,000 trips per day
Presently?
presently. And it's been that way for over 10 years. In fact, when we were building People Street, this is before you saw all the commercial developments, the one debate we had was whether or not we take Browns Mill and run it straight down this road, or would it be a straight-through movement onto People Street and feed around to what is now Johnson City Crossing. We felt that because of the growth potential of the crossings, that the road would be better served to be straight through, and that's been proven to be correct. So what then happened is when we built the road, and then you had all the other roads and all the other developments occur, that the volumes of Browns Mill actually went down. Okay, it makes sense. That used to be sort of the outer loop road. And so now we've been hovering around 2,000 vehicles a day for an extended period of time. The reason you don't see the numbers changing is, that's the next thing we looked at, is what's the growth potential of the area? If it's staying stationary, is there something we're missing that could affect the total quantity on that road? There's only really two smaller tracks, roughly equivalent to this, maybe a little larger. And they're both located on Swanee Drive, right? Other than that, there is no growth in the area, and we don't expect to see much of a change to occur over a long period of time. So we believe that the 2-lane road is sufficient. Sufficient today, in fact, more than sufficient, and sufficient well into the future. We don't get concerned with a 2-lane road to change the nature of the road to where, and we've been doing this for 40 years, to change the nature of the road to either 3 lanes or turn lanes or that, until we see volumes that are around 9,000 trips per day. That will never happen on this road. And so at 9,000, we would first look at where the roads intersect arterials or some other road. And we increase the capacity of the intersections at the ends, and those have been done in this particular case already. We're actually looking at either signalizing or putting a roundabout in where Browns Mill intersects with People Street, right? We looked at, so there frankly is no need to increase the size of this street. Not now, not into the foreseeable future, regardless of whether or not the land on Swanee develops or not. It's just not gonna change. 2,000 vehicles a day is very minimal from our perspective of looking at all streets throughout the community. Does the street itself need to be curbed and stuff like that? Yeah, there's ditch lines in there, and that's a concern that we look at annually when we put together the capital improvements plan as to what streets are need improvement in the future. And that would be the only reason that we would upgrade the street. Capacity is fine. The width of the street's 22 feet. Lane widths of 11 feet we build them to 11 feet. Typically on the interstate and places, you'll see it's typically 12 feet. These are 11, more than adequate. What we're building on Walnut Street, I believe is 10 and a half. We have no problems with that. We looked at sight distance. Sight distance is very, very adequate. 600 feet in one direction, 400 in another, with a traffic speed of 25 miles an hour. Typically, you would need roughly,
Hey, try 70 mile an hour.
Okay, folks, I'm gonna ask that we please be respectful and allow him to speak. Everybody will have their turn.
typically when you're talking about that, we might add 10 miles an hour for sight distance, which would put it at 300 feet or so. So that's adequate. There are 4 types of streets in town, if people are confused about that. And
Could you speak up on that? I didn't hear that.
so the first size is a residential street. That's the street that you live on, right? Typically, you're in a neighborhood. Those are residential. It is service the residents. We have lanes. We look at that when densities allow to reduce the cost of construction for the developer. But typically, that's a residential street. We then go to a neighborhood feeder street. Well, why do we do these things? Because we want, it could affect the zoning, could affect setbacks, could affect the width of the street, could affect setbacks. And so we make these designations for that reason. So then feeder streets are those streets that feed out of a neighborhood. And it's really like a single point of access. And so all the neighbors will feed into that street. We want people to be cognizant of the fact that that street is a little different because it will have higher volumes than the typical residential street. Well, what do they feed into? They feed into collectors. This is a collector street. And so on a collector street, what you have is all the neighborhoods are feeding into that street, and that street is collecting the traffic. That's why it's called collector. And those type of streets on 2-lane will typically handle up to 12,000 vehicles a day before you really got to start looking at any type of improvements. So keep in mind that at 12,000 is when we really start looking. We start looking at 9, 10, get ourselves prepared. In this case, 2,000, that is nothing. That, to us, that is not an issue. When we look at all the streets in the community, that is not an issue. So a collector street is designated such because it too will impact setbacks, width of right-of-ways, that sort of thing. It's to prepare the community in the future, whenever that future occurs, so that you have adequate right-of-way in order to make those improvements, such as a center turn lane or improvement at an intersection or widening a street or that sort of thing. The collector streets have at their endpoints arterial streets. Arterials are the ones that feed through a community and then feed out of a community. So you got Bristol Highway, Market Street, Rome, that sort of thing. Those are the big ones that are typically 5 lanes, typically. Collectors may get up to 3 lanes, but only when you're starting to look at volumes in that 12,000 range. We looked at, so in this particular case, what we look at is we don't want high-density residential feeding into a neighborhood street, a residential street. Those don't work. I get way too many complaints about that. What we prefer is knowing that the construction industry is changing, the price of housing is changing, we prefer those type of developments to actually feed onto collector streets. So we got 2,000 trips a day on this street, and we're adding 700. To us, it is not an issue and does not warrant further improvements, except for the developer who needs to put in a right turn lane. We don't need traffic studies. We know what the volumes are. We know what his volumes are. Needs to put the right turn lane in. We looked at the nature of the street. I mentioned whether or not it was safe. It is. It's 11 feet wide. It does have constraints such as ditch lines. We looked at accidents. The accidents are occurring where the residential streets are further up the way, where sight distance is more minimal than at this location. And we found 8 accidents since 2013. You're averaging 1 a year. So that doesn't raise a concern to us on accident rates. Every accident is an issue. We understand that. But it doesn't present itself to cause us to spend public dollars making improvements. It's just not that high. So we looked at sight distance, volumes, accidents, looked at all that. And it's our preference that these type developments actually enter and exit off of Collector Street, which is what they're doing. And so I think I covered all the bases of traffic issues as it relates to this development, and that's why the staff is prepared to say that we have no problems from a traffic standpoint.
Can I ask you to clarify, please? You mentioned where traffic accidents typically have occurred. Can you describe on the diagram, are you talking about on the north, on the upper left-hand corner of the street?
It would be, I think there was one at Fox, I hit it wrong. It's Actually, how do I get back? Is that Berkeley, is it? From what I read. Yeah, it's not Buxley, I think it's Berkeley. Might have been one at Hazel. Some of those streets that are in this particular, I can't get this, in this particular area,
Okay, that's what I thought I understood you to say.
but
Just
not
ask for a
necessarily down
clarification.
here.
Thank you.
If I have an issue of all the transportation in this particular area, it would be the intersection of Swanee with Roan Street. So we're gonna make improvements out there. We have that planned and budgeted, and I really gotta take a hard look at that intersection. It's a difficult one.
Bill, how will this development, if approved, impact the nature of Swanee Drive? Is it going to change it from the existing type of street? Is it a neighborhood street now? Is that correct?
Right, it won't change the nature
It won't change
of,
it, so
Yeah,
the
the-
additional, because I would assume of the 720 trips that are potentially generated from this apartment complex, probably half of them are going to shoot straight out Swanee to Roan.
I don't think hardly
don't
any
think?
of them will.
Really?
Yeah, it is so easy to get out onto People Street and so easy to get to Oakland. Oakland takes you straight to the interstate, which is how they're gonna access. I don't know what school district it's in.
Count acres.
So you don't anticipate any impact on Swanee Drive from this?
No.
Okay.
There'll be some who will try. That's what I'm saying is
Right.
they'll try, but they won't do it very often.
Okay, thank you.
But we still need to address it when we get to that improvement project.
Are there other questions of staff at this time?
I have a question
I
as
don't feel that.
as a point of reference, just to understand traffic load. Phil, could you estimate for me what kind of traffic count you have per day on Sunset, just as a point of comparison?
Sunset is around 16 or 17.
16 or 17?
Yeah, the 4-lane portion of Sunset.
16 or 17,000?
Mhm.
Thousand?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's been higher when we were when we were building State of Franklin. It was the outer loop and then dropped back down.
So it's at least 8 or 10 times the traffic load?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The major routes, the interstate is gonna be around 60, That's what the numbers reflect. The big arterials like State of Franklin, Rome stuff, they range from 25 to 30. And then you'll dip down on some of the major collector streets like Sunset, you get down around 16, 17. Then you'll get down to places like Cherokee, Milligan Highway, places like that will be around 8 or 9. The 2 is actually really, if you look at the TDOT map, 2,000 is very, very low. I bet there aren't 10 streets they monitor that are under 2,000. It is very, very low in comparison.
Okay, thank you very much.
And
Very
so
helpful.
I think transportation system is very adequate for this development at whatever the density requirements.
Okay, are there other questions of staff?
Thank you.
Jamie, I
Thanks.
Thank you, Phil.
think
I
you
have
were
a-
going to ask,
I've-
you're good for
no,
that?
I have some for Whitney, if she's
Okay.
handling it. Do you have some for Whitney as well? I know you were talking earlier about maintaining the current tree lines as a buffer.
Yes.
Does that actually meet the requirements of the buffer of the R4?
I believe, yes, they will have to add some landscaping, but they get it counted towards their landscaping.
Okay, so
Like,
The-
so-
the difference between R3 and R4, are those typically the same buffers? Or are those,
That I don't know. I'm looking over.
is it a type 2?
I like that too, yes.
And I couldn't tell on the concept plan, and was the property gonna be fenced or boarded or any particular way, or is it just gonna be just through the buffer?
I think it's just through the buffer. That's what it shows. I didn't really
Okay.
notice the fence.
While they're looking that up, just one other question. Are there any types of, between the R3 and the R4, in terms of building materials, as far as the facade, front brick? Is there
Not in-
anything between the
no,
R3
not
and
in-
R4?
Not in this,
particular
there's
area?
there's not an overlay.
There's not an overlay in
There
this area.
is a highway overlay so that they can't put, a lot of, I like to call it backside of building kind of things along the interstate.
Right,
But
lighting and whatnot?
their intention is to, kind of front that as well.
Okay.
And the applicant is here as well, if you have questions for the applicant.
The R4 is a low impact, is considered a low impact in the zoning ordinance, abutting single family, which is always treated as no impact, so it'd be a type 1 buffer.
Type 1.
Yes, sir. And just the city forester, Pat, we like to make use of natural vegetation if we can. It's often more effective than what's planted. The city forester has some discretion in what he permits with the natural buffer, so it'd be more than sufficient.
Thank you, Will.
227.
All right. Other questions of staff? Are you good? Okay. Then what I'd like to do is open a public hearing. We really do appreciate everyone's attendance, and we want to make sure everyone is heard. Given the large number of people that wish to speak, I'm going to ask that everybody please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less each, and that is our standard for all of our public hearings, so that's not anything we're imposing just for this one. I'd also ask, just in the interest of time, if somebody gets up and speaks and you basically just agree with them, if you would just want to get up and give your name and say you are in agreement, we don't need to have everything repeated as much as through each person. So those things. When you do come forward, I ask that each person would please start by giving their name and their address. That is for the public record. And then again, we'll ask you to limit your talks to 3 minutes each. So whoever would like to speak first, please feel free to start. Also, one other rule kind of in a public hearing. If you have questions and things, you may ask, and we'll try to jot them down, and we'll see if we can get them answered for you. But please refrain from asking staff questions directly. Okay, that's for us to do, not for you. Thank you. Who'd like to start?
I'm Carmen Brown. I live at 2817 Browns Mill Road, which is adjacent to this property that's being considered.
Are you
for
adjacent on the left or the right? Would you mind telling me?
The left side from that drawing.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I'm not against this being developed. I think it needs to be developed. I mean, it's not been used as farmland for a little bit, so since Mr. Brent died, you know. And so I'm not against it being developed. I am against 3 stories and 210 apartments next to me. And personally, because it's right beside my property, because of the noise and other issues. But regardless of what has been stated by the street person here, it is an unsafe street. My driveway is a blind driveway, and it's not 600 feet of visual. I've been almost hit multiple times coming out of my driveway. I pull a trailer almost every day, which makes it even more dangerous for me to pull out of my driveway. And I also know that especially walking down and talking to folks about this, that many people have to back out of their driveways or back into their driveways going down Browns Mill Road because of the space that's there. So that's an issue. It is a safety issue. I know it's a safety issue at the other end of Browns Mill Road where those apartments are. Because you top that hill and there's people coming out of already existing apartments there. So it is an issue, and I just feel like it's it's a safety issue, and many of us get honked at every day. People get mad at us every day, and so I believe it is an issue. The congestion is an issue at the bottom of Browns Mill Road, turning onto Oakland. I would invite you to travel that at 5 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 12 o'clock. All of you, before it's just to travel that. It's hard to get out onto Oakland to turn left. If you turn right onto Oakland, they're backed up usually halfway back to Browns Mill Road during those times. It's hard to get out onto Peoples Street to turn left right there, where they are considering doing a roundabout. It's just very difficult to do that. He mentioned Swanee Drive. Swanee Drive is very difficult. There is no left turn out of Swanee Drive. You have to turn right, and even then you have to kind of ease out so you can actually see around the Jiffy Lube. So it's that's an issue. Traffic is an issue on this deal. It really is. The width of the road, I don't know about that, but I do know we don't have sidewalks, and you're getting ready to add a whole lot more pedestrians to this area that has no sidewalks in there. So if you ever jog, walk, or ride a bike, you're taking your life in your own hands in there. So. To us, he said 700 more cars is not a big deal. It's a big deal to us, and that's why we're here. So,
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Brown, as a point of clarification, it's not 210 apartments. It's only 100
yeah, 200. It's going to be over 200 people, though. I mean,
people, but not apartments.
and you're adding 720 trips in cars.
Just want to make sure that
okay.
you
I understand that.
Okay.
I'll be short and sweet. It's time, 3 minutes to the right on the dot.
My name is Scott Holly. I live at 2827 Browns Mill Road, Johnson City, Tennessee. I'm here tonight because I recently learned of proposed zoning change for 2803 Browns Mill Road to R4, and to express my objection to this. While I appreciate the city's desire to increase the number of residents, like he said, I'm for that, I know that the local community may be unable to prevent development that would be detrimental to the area, but myself, as well as numerous residents of Browns Mill Road, are completely opposed to rezoning an addition of multifamily housing, higher density zone, as this will cause the traffic and safety problems which already exist to increase, which create even more problems with the schools that are already struggling with the capacity problems. 10 acres, my granddaughter goes there in particular, will destroy local wildlife that inhabits the area and has been observed in the area in question here, and could very well potentially lower the property values of the existing Browns Mill Road community. One of my major concerns is traffic and safety. As I've been told, there is expected development of this property that could potentially be up to 200 plus vehicles to Browns Mill Road, which is already a thoroughfare or shortcut for many residents of Johnson City. Heavy traffic, and I'd like for him to come between 8 and 10 o'clock, set at 2827 Browns Mill Road in my driveway when my granddaughter gets on a school bus, and let you see what goes on. I personally want you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, please refrain from making comments directly to staff or questions of staff. We'll address all of those after everybody has had a chance to speak, I promise you, but let's please refrain from that. All right, next person.
Thank you again for letting me speak.
Thank you. We appreciate it, Mr. Hawley.
Yeah, I feel like everyone here stole my thunder. I'm John Little. I live at 2810 Browns Mill Road. One of the main concerns for me would be the traffic as well. The TDOT did a study on it, says it's 2,000 cars a day, but that doesn't show peak. That's throughout the whole 24 hours, right?
I'll have to ask that of Mr.
I mean,
Pinzola. I'm not sure.
during parts of the day, there's not a lot of cars up and down the road, but at the peak time, it's almost unbearable. And we talked about some of the traffic accidents there. They said it was only like 9 throughout the year. I don't know if that included down at the bottom of the hill at West Oakland Avenue. That's impossible. You need to look at that. I think he gave you Fox. Fox up there, there's like 10 houses on Fox.
I'll ask about that as well,
Yes.
Thomas.
Okay. My wife and I personally went out and bought one of those two-way mailboxes just so we wouldn't have to get into the street. And then we live right across the street from the new development, and you saw the pictures where all the rocks and stuff. Well, that right there was probably an 80-foot drop down through there. So I listen for a car coming down the hill because you can't see them through the trees to see if I have just enough time to go get my paper. And I mean, that's why it's that bad. There's no public transportation on this road, no sidewalks. I think the closest bus stops would be up on Springbrook or down on West Oakland Avenue. So if any of these people don't have transportation at this complex, how are they going to walk to those places to get there? You definitely don't want them walking northbound on Browns Mill Road. They'll get killed between the rocks because you've got the 11 feet of pavement and then you've got limestone. Another concern would be the town acres, the school district. I've heard that it's already overcrowded, and these apartment buildings are going to house probably maybe 100 kids. You know, where are they going to go to school? Are you going to put another burden on town acres? Another thing is, I talked to the gentleman that's building the houses on Hazel Street, just right down the road. I don't know if they have any pictures of that. Okay, Hazel Street is just right down the road over the hill past Tip's house. And there's a man he's built some houses up through there. His name was Dan Rutledge. You probably know, some of you have probably met him. He's built nice homes up there. One sold for $280,000. Now that's what I would propose for this property. Instead of being R3, it needs to be homes. Everything up and down the road is homes except for the townhomes that are back up on Hazel Street that they showed you. And that was fought 2006 to try to keep that from happening, but I wish I would have been around to do something about it. I would have spoke up as well.
Mr. Little, I'm going to ask you to try to wrap up your comments as soon as you can, please.
I mean, I would personally welcome that kind of development, those other single houses up through there, that would be great. And I feel like this development here would, is not in the vision that we have for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Next person who wishes to speak? Yeah, come on forward.
I'm Bob Archer. I live right there up on Springbrook Drive. And you can see that little curve coming up towards Peoples Street there. Actually, before you get to Peoples, you got the overpass there. And I concur, I'm going to be brief, I concur that I feel this is a real, more of a safety thing due to that street. And if I'm not mistaken, the lanes are 11.5 feet, that's standard.
I believe he stated that this particular street is 11 feet.
For each lane?
For each lane, so
Okay, and
22
that's a
feet
standard
wide.
throughout the city, is that not correct? Anyway, if that's the standard, I don't go down this street as much as the residents probably up and do. I'm going to Walmart. Well, I don't go there very often. But that rock area that you're talking about, when I go through it, it's like a canyon. And I kind of cringe. The thought comes to me every time. And you're going way downhill towards Swanee Drive. And sometimes people drive really fast there. And I've even kind of veered out of the lane some. You got to be darn careful. And the one thing I want to sort of point out is maybe it's a one-time happening, but coming off of Swanee Drive, I saw a tractor trailer there last year, a long one, trying to make that turn and come back up towards Springbrook Drive. He had everything blocked. And I think I can't remember, I think I just backed up and went the long way around to come home. So I don't know what kind of congestion or something that would culminate off of Swanee Drive in that regard. But again, it's the safety issue, and I would concur with the gentleman here that it'd be much nicer if it was just expanded into housing instead of apartments. Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate your comments, Mr. Archer.
Hi, I'm Caitlin McNabb. I live at 2904 Dorothy Street. That is one of the streets on the north side of the map here. As somebody who has driven off the asphalt on Monday, I would like to point out that this is not a safe road for the existing traffic. We have people coming off of Oakland using Dorothy to Chapman to get to Browns Mill Road. Speeding around that corner, there's blind spots all through there. And once you get to Browns Mill Road, people are regularly driving 45 miles an hour down that road. And I've had close calls on that road as well. I drive Oakland and Browns Mill almost every day. They do get congested, like these other gentlemen have pointed out. But my concern is that there is no enforcement of the traffic laws on this street, and there's nothing in the adjoining roads to prevent people from using those as thoroughfares to get there. They're speeding, going 45 miles an hour on these neighborhood streets as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
My name is Alice Carleen Looper. I am a member of the Swanee Drive contingent of this neighborhood. I live on Swanee Drive, 314 Swanee Drive. But I am a descendant of the Brown family who once the beloved 200 years of farming on this farm. And I would also like to, my main problem is the traffic issues and the safety on Browns Mill Road. I would just like to state that nobody drives 25 miles an hour down Browns Mill Road. As this lady said, people drive usually 45 miles an hour. It's like a roller coaster. And they like to experience the roller coaster effect. So they will drive 40, 45, maybe even 50 miles an hour down that road. On Swanee, except for one incline at the top of the road, the rest of the road is a straight shot from Browns Mill to Roan Street. People turn that road into a drag strip to see how fast their cars can go. Even just the other day, a trash truck came barreling up that road and dumped, something fell off the back of the truck and dumped a rather large load of garbage on my street right in front of my house. So even the garbage trucks will fly through there. But I would like to point out that Brownsville was not always a collector road. I grew up, I'm over 50. I may not look it, but I am. I grew up on Browns Mill Road. I remember playing in the street without having to worry about cars coming and hitting me. It was before there was an interstate. It is zoning change after zoning change after zoning change that has created the traffic issues and the danger on this street. And I would ask that you consider that in making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Is there anybody else?
I live on 507 Berkeley, and Berkeley, you can't see it in the picture. It's just past the crest at the top of Browns Mill. I don't know what the sight lines are, but it's a blind pull out. When you go left, if people are going the speed limit, you're okay, but most people don't. And so you either have to get on the gas or put it in reverse. And add the extra traffic to the peak travel times through there, that can be quite difficult just to get to Kroger or to access the businesses that we like to access over on Peoples. So I just want that to be heard. If you get a chance, maybe you could find out what the sight distance is from the pullout of Berkeley to the top of Browns Mill. And then also one more question. Well, I just lost it, kind of nervous, but that's okay. Anyway, if I think of it, I'll write it down and get it to you somehow.
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
comments. Anybody else like to speak?
Hi, my name is John Quiros. I live at 501 Berkeley Court. And I know it's a tough job for you. You're the stewards for the future of Johnson City. We trust you to make the best decision for the community. I believe that the traffic has increased within the last 10 years. I don't know when the last traffic study was done. I think would be more proper if you did a current study. The growth of the population in Johnson City in the last few years has increased, along with the traffic. There's also new buildings were built on People Street 2 or 3 years ago. There are also rentals. They've increased the number of people that travel through that road. I think it would be wise to do a more current traffic study than a 10-year-old data comparison. I know that the paperwork that the developer submitted, that they're gonna do a traffic impact study as to the road. That has not been submitted yet. It's in your paperwork for the permit. I hope that they do, so you have a more clear answer as to what really is happening on Browns Mill Road. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
I'm Kent Line. I'm kind of here on behalf of my father, who lives on Berkeley Court at 503 Berkeley Court. And I know we talked about Berkeley just a little bit, but right now, there's a serious line of sight issue on that street coming out to the right-hand side. And I'll say, anybody come out there and get on Berkeley Court during a busy time of the day and pull out on Browns Mill Road. It's bad, absolutely terrible. I don't know how many times. I grew up on Berkeley Court, and then I moved away, but I visit my dad very often, and I fear for him every time he pulls out. I don't know how many times I've got in fights over people who come over that hill flying, and of course I point my finger at them, and they take offense to it. I don't shoot them a bird, anything like that. I just point my finger, and they'll stop and come back, and I'll say, "What's your problem?" You know, I mean, I know that's something else, but that's the serious issue of this. Please go out, do another traffic study, because it needs to be done. It really does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pardon? Yes, yes, you may. Anybody is welcome to speak. I'm going to wait till you get to the microphone, though, please.
I'm going to speak on behalf of my mom. She didn't ask me to.
Well, I need your name and address
My name is
first.
Pam Moody.
Thank you.
I used to live at 2818 Brown Mill Road, but now I live out in Boones Creek. But my 90-year-old mother, well, she'll be 90 in August, still lives there. It's on the corner of Berkeley Court, which up here says it's Buxley Court, but it's Berkeley Court, and Brown's Mill. She lives in the corner house. You turn into her driveway just as Carlene said, the roller coaster road, which I remember as a kid, that's what I thought it was. I was like, woo, it's like a roller coaster. Well, you go down the hill, hit Swanee, go back up, and just as you top that second hill, you turn into my mom's driveway. I can remember as a child, before my father made the driveway go around and come out on Berkeley Court, almost being hit by a car, leaving with my mom to go to church choir with about 6 kids in the car because we all went to church together. Instead, he hit an oak tree. But it is not a safe road. I cringe every time I turn into my mom's driveway. She's almost 90, folks. She's considering to have her driveway paved to rock so that people can enter from Berkeley Court and not have to be going out onto Brown's Mill. That's not a cost she should have to incur at this time in her life. She's lived there since I was 10 and I'm 60. So it needs to be considered. It also needs to be considered town acres. I'm a school teacher. I teach at Fairmont Elementary here in Johnson City. I know we're crowded. I know we're crowded. I know 5th grade's coming back in a year. That's going to be an issue with the schools. If they bring which if it's apartments, there's going to be kids. There's all these young families. That's how we all started out. There's all these young families. There's going to be more kids at Town Acres, and what's that going to do to the school district? Single-family homes is the way to go. It's what the neighborhood has. Those at the end of Hazel, my son lives on the corner of Hazel and Browns Mill. He bought that house from the Littles. He tells me all the time about all the traffic from the apartments. And from what I understand, that road was supposed to be widened in and didn't get it. I don't know. That's just what I've heard. But you need to think about what goes on. Maybe duplexes. That'll get you a few more houses in there, a few more people in there, but not to the point these apartments are gonna get. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moody. Would anybody else like to speak?
Can I say one other thing? Since I didn't take my 3 minutes?
I'll permit it, come on up. But please restate your name and address just to make it
Yeah,
legit.
Scott Holly, 2827 Brownville Road, Johnson City. I've got a little 7-year-old granddaughter, goes to Town Acres. My wife of 15 years as of today,
Congratulations.
thank you, backs out of the driveway a lot with our grandbaby. I go in and out, I'm a firefighter also, so it is very dangerous. I do believe they need to do another study, because where them other apartments are, it's been there for years. Their little single road comes out right there, but when you pop around that curve, they're gonna have to gun it or back up, and you just need to go out there. I'd like to, all of y'all just go out there and look at that one spot's all you'd have to look at right there when you come around that curve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address us on this matter? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Can I ask one question?
Step on up.
Okay, I meant to ask that, where he's speaking of, there at those other apartments, Bob Archer again, to West Springbrook Drive.
Thank you.
Those Browns Mill apartments, well, actually, when you come off Springbrook, you're going up to Kroger or whatever, and that curve, and this is what happens when they're talking about speeding, that dip. If you're coming either way, well, actually, if you're coming back from the lower end back this way, because that's more steep coming up the canyon there, and people naturally accelerate. I do, and they're coming up there so fast that if I'm coming out of Springbrook, going up to Kroger or whatever, that little crook right there, people, it's blind, and they can come up there very quickly. And I am very cautious now. That's the first place I look when I get to the intersection of Browns Mill and Springbrook. I look that way, then I look up this way, and I look back that way. And then I kind of hurriedly pull out. And then I look in my rear view mirror to make sure somebody ain't there. So, and the question I have is, I don't know about that street as far as being related to fire and rescue or ambulance in the way of a speed bump. I don't know. I know there's restrictions that the fire department or the city has, a fire department. On certain streets, they cannot put speed bumps for fast access for fire and rescue, I suppose. But I would like to get that question asked. Is it possible to have a speed bump coming up off that little crook right there? Because that's where people are really going fast to come back up the hill. So the speed bump thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
We'll ask the question. Is there anybody else? All right, I'm gonna officially close the public hearing, though.
See, anybody in favor?
Pardon?
In favor?
Oh, is there anybody who wanted to speak in favor of this proposal?
Is there a developer here?
Is the developer here? Maybe we'll certainly let you speak before we close the public hearing. My apologies.
My name's Rick Gentry, 12248 Patagonia Lane, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37922. I've been in the apartment business a long time, 20, 25 years, and you can see all kinds of information out these days from any kind of source that you want, that we need not only do we need apartments, but we need single family, but we need a mix of the two. I picked this site very carefully, maybe not carefully enough, but I looked at it and I saw an interstate on one side, apartments on one side, condominiums on one side, and, you know, you're looking at higher density. I mean, the interstate's not gonna be any problem. And I knew that, of course, people across the street around would probably have something to say, but I mean, I did my best to pick out a site that would have, you know, minimum opposition. But this site is actually 10.8 acres. I don't have a survey, but we've looked at it so many times, and we're asking really for 11.1 units per acre, even though on our map we just put 10 because we know there's 10 there. But, and after I decided I wanted that site, the first thing I did is drive up and take my tape, and I measured the lanes. And I just felt pretty good about going forward. But if you got any questions, that's.
Thank you. We'll let you know if we have questions.
Okay.
Right, is there anyone else in the public that wants to speak for or against? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. We'll address as many of your questions as we can to the appropriate staff members. We'll deliberate amongst ourselves, so please stay and listen to as much of that. I do want to let you know, before we make any vote or anything, we are a body that recommends to the City Commission, so we will take a vote tonight, but that is just a recommendation of the Planning Commission to the City Commission. So regardless of what we decide tonight, this will move forward to the City Commission, unless the developer would choose to pull it for any reason. The City Commission will look at this on 3 different readings. They will have a public meeting during the second of those 3 readings. So I encourage you to, again, keep up with the City Commission calendar so you can continue to follow this throughout, and you'll be able to see what the final outcome may be. Okay? All right. Phil, would you mind coming back to the hot seat? Because I heard several questions from the public that I think you might be able to help us with. The most recent question was, is there any way that we could put any type of speed control mechanisms, be it a speed bump or any other speed reducing mechanisms on Browns Mill or the adjacent streets?
The reason we don't allow that is for the emergency services and fire department to have full access to minimize the time between getting a call and getting to the house. So it's more of a safety measure, so we don't allow it.
Is there something else? I am sympathetic to the hearing plenty of people say that although the posted speed limit may be 25, that the real speed limit of what people are doing is substantially more. Is there anything else that we could do to try to reduce the traveled speed on that road? Either from, I don't know if it's an enforcement issue or if there's something that you could do?
Probably the only thing that would be, obviously the police department has issues about getting people on board and stuff, so they're down. One of the individuals, generally the way we look at peak volumes and can calculate actually the ADT over just by looking at peak volumes. Peak volumes generally will account for 10% of the total. So we can take the total at peak and multiply. That gets you to 2,000. So just listening to him, it would sound like we're running about 200 vehicles during peak times. So the police department would have to adjust their schedule of police enforcement, most likely during those peak times, to minimize the impact it has on their workload. And we can bring that to them see if they'll do that.
I also heard several comments asking about whether you knew what the sight distance for Berkeley Drive was. There was several people that commented that that seemed to be a more dangerous intersection, perhaps. Can you?
Yeah, when I look at the accident issues, which are minimal, it probably is associated with some sort of sight distance issue for the homeowner or for the street, which relates back to the original argument of whether or not the road is completely safe regardless of development. And that's what they're pointing out. They're pointing out these issues to them who they have to experience it every day. It's difficult. And so we will look at that in terms of whether or not to recommend improvements to the road after some analysis of sight distance and see if we can make some improvements that actually improves, especially on the lower side. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm slowing traffic down, but I may very well be able to increase the sight distance issues. But that is regardless of the developer, regardless of this development.
Okay.
And so I hear them.
Okay, so you'll address the Berkeley issue no
Yeah,
matter what happens tonight.
We'll probably be out there tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I've got to go to 2827.
Okay. Do you all recall any other questions that I should specifically ask Phil while he's here?
I don't know that this is a Phil question, but one of the individuals commented about, back to the development aspect of it, is there any way to create a bus stop on a collector street for a subdivision or for a?
Well, you could, and we have pull-offs. You know, the one that comes to mind would be, say, in front of the Millennium Center, where you actually have a pull-off. That's possible.
Because I have seen that not only on Browns Mill, but on Carroll Creek and other collector streets where there are not sidewalks. And Mountain View, for instance, where they're having to walk either on the road or in the ditch, so to speak, to get to a bus stop. So from a planning perspective, it would be nice if these developments, that if they are coming in, to somehow create a pull-off to work with the pedestrian traffic.
That could be a requirement of the developer to do such a thing, because he does have to do something with a right turn lane.
As
Now,
far as the decel lane?
He has a right turn lane that he needs to build, and so he could move dirt around on site some way to extend that out for a bus stop, especially for the school kids.
Okay.
Because you assume there will be school kids coming out of the development. Whether or not there is a school bus in the area, my guess is there is, but they choose not to be on Browns Mill for the reasons cited.
Sure.
And so they'll pull off and maybe have it at Berkeley or Dorothy or something like that, is probably where they're picking up.
Okay, well, thank you.
Phil, is it possible to make some of the improvements on some of these intersections of these secondary streets going into what I consider a through street? Yeah, I don't think it's really a collector as much as being a through street. I mean, I've lived here over 50 years. I've been on that street maybe once or twice. So I don't consider it a shortcut. We've got the problem of the intersection with West Oakland, which is problematic in itself. So I would assume that anybody who lives there would go towards Springbrook. But some of these intersections, could there be widening of the intersections themselves in terms of the curves where people are safer when they pull out?
We actually did one at, was it Dorothy Street, I think it was, and we actually made some improvements with the ditch line and stuff. What I'm hearing from them, and it's legitimate, they have both driveways that feed straight onto the street. It's unfortunate that they have to back. It would be nice, and we could take a look at, that they could make a turnaround in their yard. I don't know if they could or couldn't. But they're talking about a combination of both the public street sight distance as well as driveway sight distance. And that's what we're gonna take a look at tomorrow, guys.
I think those are the key, seems like to me, that's the key safety issues, is people backing out of the driveway, having enough width, having enough time to see what's coming. to
That
avoid-
issue exists today,
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not you even had this issue before you.
That's what I'm hearing. The issue's already here, right?
And Phil, I believe I heard you say, but somebody did ask, what was the date of the last or most recent traffic study? I think you said it was
They do them
21.
annually. That's a TDOT marker, and so that's done annually.
Okay.
And so the data I saw was for the last 10 years.
Okay,
And it's each year, and it's just not moving.
thank you.
One other question. Do I understand correctly, the developer is putting in sidewalks as part of his concept plan?
Yes, sir.
So Phil, does that have any implications for your long-range plans to put sidewalks around the community?
Yes.
So that could be an encouragement for you to put sidewalks there,
Absolutely.
make it a priority?
It could.
Okay.
We try to do connectivities whenever they're there, and whenever private developers are putting in fairly large segments, we do take a look at trying to get some connection for those, rather than just being out there isolated. I think we put it up Swanee. I think we put a sidewalk up Swanee in anticipation of something in the future.
I've got a question for Whitney. Whitney, right now you've got an R3 zone there, which allows for 70 units. If you crank up to 120 units, what kind of traffic impact is that? And I look at it again as a through street, not as a collector street,
Are you talking about Browns Mill?
Brownsville.
Phil stated that the 120 units would be about 700.
Trips.
720 trips. per
20
day.
trips a day.
So what would what would 70 units have?
What would
What
7
would-
units be? Oh.
What would they add?
Yeah, what they do is they look at kind of a national or regional analysis of those size units. And I believe the number is 6 trips per day for something that's around 1,000 square feet, which is probably what he's gonna build, or a little bit less. So family size. Now, if you're in some of your neighborhoods, those trips, bigger the home, bigger the families, more trips you have. My experience is that it sounds like a lot, but the reality is it's not that noticeable to me. But what their question is from the residents is what happens at peak times. And it's not a significant amount, but I have to relate that to, they will be coming in and out at the peak times. So what you probably ought to also be cognizant of is the current zoning allows you so many units, right?
So it's 7
So
per
you're really
acre.
talking about the difference between what the zoning allows today and what they're proposing.
Proposing.
That's it.
So that the net increase is probably in the range of 50.
So, with 7 units per acre, how many?
50.
50 units?
50 units.
So 50 times 6.
50 units more.
So it'd be 300 trips versus 720 trips.
That's about, about right. Won't be quite that.
feel, I hesitate to say it because of the square footage, like, that's actually,
Understand.
that comes out of, a manual that has, compiled data throughout the country. So, I could say rough 400 to 430, rough. Just, but yeah, I'm not a I really need to say, I'm not a transportation planner
Okay.
at all.
Whitney, there was also a question or a comment from somebody that the repeated zoning changes have created these issues that we're now experiencing. When was this property currently zoned?
I
Or
cannot
maybe
answer that.
Preston can help
can
us
answer that.
and-
But I do want to say that with some of that, like, if you have grown up on that road, that, if we're taking even my own lifetime, what that looked like in that amount of time, there would be zoning changes. Now, there may not have necessarily always occurred along Browns Mill Road, but what occurred on Roan Street, what occurs on Oakland and People Street, those are the rezoning changes that have impacted Browns Mill Road, which, as you know, continues on to Carroll Creek. So, it's been around a while. So there's been several iterations.
I think 2006 was when it was rezoned, Preston.
So it's been at least 15 years that it's been zoned currently. And just to enlighten everybody who may not have attended the neighborhood meeting, based on the current zoning, we know the number of units per acre that would be permitted, but what could be built there?
Based on the current zoning, I need Bill's book.
14 units.
Oh, first it's
No, 7.
7 units, so 70 units. I thought you meant like all the uses that could be there. Like,
7 units per acre, but, so we're not necessarily talking single-family homes, which is what people would love to see. Obviously, the neighbors, that would be their preference, for this to all be developed as single-family homes.
I don't think
And that
single-family
would
homes
not-
are precluded from that. It's just usually when people look at zoning, they look at what the chalkboard on the wall, highest and best use. And so that's where people immediately go to this is what we can do. But you can put single-family homes in this, like
Right.
on that, and that
Yeah.
might, yeah.
But single family and
Multi-family.
apartments
Right.
are allowed now.
Okay.
Duplexes, those kinds of things.
Do we know anything about the school, the concerns about the school?
Unfortunately, I do not. I haven't heard it officially as a process of this rezoning. I do believe that there is a noted issue at Town Acres.
They're gonna replace Town Acres, it's
Okay.
whenever the monies are removed.
But-
Well, and
but the
I assume
poli-
Town Acres is going to be a part of the two middle schools now too, right? Won't they be impacted by that?
Well, the middle schools, yes, they will be.
Yeah,
The
they-
policy, the current policy within the school board is the kids are not specifically in a zone. If this development goes in and there's openings at Woodland, they can put them to Woodland, or they can put them to Lake Ridge. So you're not, just because you're bound in a zone doesn't mean you have to go to that zone.
Okay,
You could go to Northside for that matter.
okay.
Yeah, they're building capacity.
But it's not necessarily there's gonna be overcrowding, obviously, no matter what. That's, you don't, I mean, we went through all the building, 5 years ago, and here we are. Which would put me back on my soapbox of impact fees. I'm done.
Those are all the questions that I wrote down, that I heard from people. Did anybody else hear any that I haven't addressed?
R3 should have been down here, and single family should have been in here, and R3 down here.
Pardon?
It's still,
Yeah.
it's still.
Oh, a question about wildlife impact?
That is
think
not
that's-
something that I can necessarily address.
Okay. I mean, if I can speak, I feel like I'm very sympathetic to the comments I'm hearing. I really am. The majority of the comments appear to be related to traffic and safety, and those seem to be existing issues that I'm not sure if zoning this R3, going with the current R3 zoning or changing it to R4 is really going to change that very much. I feel like there is a safety issue that currently exists, that Phil is committed to trying to resolve that issue, and so I'm really struggling with whether that is the primary factor on whether or not we should rezone this to R4. How are you all feeling?
I tend to agree, and at least from the pedestrian standpoint, it sounds like it might actually help the safety issue. It may take a while. It's not going to be solved immediately, but it may very well end up being a positive from that standpoint.
Could be the impetus for getting the sidewalks
Might
along
force it.
Browns Mill that don't currently
It might force
exist.
that issue.
That when this, yeah, it will.
That's
Because
the thing.
when this large a parcel has sidewalks suddenly, that may really increase the speed that additional sidewalks are built.
I think Carl Turner needs to hear from y'all. Our chief needs to be aware, he may already be, but if he's not, please let him know that your concerns about the speed on Browns Mill. And can't help but think that he'll try to figure out a way to deal with it.
Pretty good chases up through there.
Do they?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, 1 o'clock in the morning, it's wide open up through there. Most of the time, John City's 2 of them right behind them.
Revisiting the idea of the pull-off for public transportation and buses, how would you recommend, or would you recommend at this particular point to incorporate that in a site plan?
If you were going to incorporate it into a motion, make it a part of your motion, that would be part of it.
Okay.
Mr. Gentry, would you be amenable to something like that being included if we ask that a pull-off be provided for public transportation for buses?
Yeah, I would be amenable to it if there won't be anybody using apartments, but I don't see it without this.
You don't think anyone from your apartments would use public transportation?
Mr. Gentry, would you come back to the mic? So
Yeah, I'm
that-
sorry.
yeah.
My mistake, I shouldn't have addressed you from here.
Yes, they will. It's finished up.
Yeah.
We have full
So my question to the developer was whether or not he would be agreeable to providing that type of pull-off, and would you state for the record where we can hear your answer again?
Yes, I would. I don't think anybody's gonna use it from the apartments. But if it helps the neighborhood, sure, I'd do it.
What, I don't,
I mean, you don't anticipate school-aged children at your apartments, perhaps?
Oh, well, wasn't thinking about students. Yeah, there'll be some.
Okay.
There won't be.
I just think that would be, if you have a mass of people, if you have an easy pickup area, that would be good.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, thank you, sir.
okay.
Do we know for most of these complexes around the city, are school buses pulling into the facilities?
I do not know that. Do you know that? I don't know how, we don't really know how they're using their
Handling that
transit,
problem. I would say, it seems to
Yeah.
me that most of them are pulling into the facility and then out.
I think what's more important too is that we enhance our traffic.
Can you speak into the microphone,
Oh,
please, Evie?
yeah, sure.
Thanks.
I think what's more important too is that we enhance our public transportation system by having not just the school buses, but the public buses. I know the Dunbar project, we have two traffic stops there for traffic buses. I think that's where the pull-off becomes very important. And to me, it's just improving these safety issues. It's going to take some effort on the city commission to do that.
Your 3 minutes is up.
That's it. I talk fast.
All right. What is the thinking of commissioners on the proposed number of units that he's asking for? We currently have 9.9 units per acre on one side of this property and 5.8 units on the other side. The current zoning is 7 units per acre, and the applicant is asking for us to approve up to 12 units per acre. Does anybody have?
Approve up to 14. He's planning to build 12.
He's planning to build 12, but the approval would be for 14. Thank you.
Because that will be in perpetuity.
No, not if it's a concept plan that's approved for 12.
Right, but if it falls through,
If it falls through, another concept plan has to come along.
and that could be 14.
That
would
can be
zoned
if
for
we
14.
so approve.
That we would have the opportunity to address at that
At least
time.
the concept.
Concept plan bonds the zoning.
The concept plan is gonna bind it to 12 units if we rezone it,
I'm not sure
For any development in the future.
That's all
unless
that
they come
concept-
back with a new proposal. Somebody
sure
could
what you're
come back
asking.
with a 14.
I'm just trying to gauge the temperature of the other
Let-
commissioners on your
Just to
thoughts.
clarify, that is how it's written in our ordinance. Is that if you came into if you approve it at R4 with a concept plan, of 14 units an acre with a concept plan of 12, that the concept plan would have to be amended. It doesn't mean that, they may still ask for 14, but there's an opportunity for a second decision.
Thank you.
The concept plan, President was just saying, the concept plan cannot be it's gonna be a hard word today. Administratively approved, it would have to come back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, is there other discussion amongst commissioners? All right, then I am looking for a motion.
I would move for approval of the rezoning request.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there additional discussion?
What about the pull-off lane?
Oh,
If the developer is agreeable to that, I don't know, I guess my attorney background's getting a little bit in the way, but it's kind of a unusual way of doing it. But yes, I'll say that the motion will be for approval with the additional pull-off lane. Whitney, is that sufficient?
Do you have to do anything with the concept plan?
That's what I'm a little bit wondering about. Does he have to make an amendment to the concept plan to?
That's what would be your recommendation, and as it moves forward, we would ask that they put that on the concept plan.
But that wouldn't have to come back to us?
No.
Okay. So I'll restate it as a motion to approve the rezoning request with the addition of a public transportation pull-off.
My second stands.
the second stands. All right, is there additional discussion? Okay, then Nicole, please call the question.
Commissioner Dagenhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich,
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
Chairwoman Wild.
Yes.
Motion approved as stated.
And may I, for the record and for the public, say that the first reading of this will be, I'm losing dates right now, August 5th. The second reading, which is the public comment, will be August 19th, with the third reading being September 2nd at this point.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to call a 2-minute recess to allow those people who would like to leave instead of attending the rest of the meeting to do so. I do ask that you do not congregate in the hallway outside because the sound will carry in here. We're going to continue our meeting in 2 minutes. right.
I actually did, 'cause I lived in North.
Okay, I'm going
I don't
to
drive there at all.
call this meeting
avoid it.
back to order after our short recess. I did want to add one thing I neglected to say about the previous item on the agenda, and that was I had received numerous emails from the public prior to this meeting regarding that. I did print each of those emails, and I did provide them all to the secretary, so they will all be part of the public record. So just anybody who may not have been here, who's watching and wants to know that your emails are being considered and passed along to City Commission. All right, with that, we're going to move on to item number 2 under new business. This is rezoning number 1077. It is at 930 Riverview Drive. And Whitney, you're on.
Okay, just to give you a site location, where we are is Riverview Drive, kind of at the very edge of our boundary. And we have, I've just lost the name of this, Square D, JD Squared, is right across the street. And it looks like all of this may have been one parcel and the road separated, but it's all industrial. And then we also have the Brush Creek Sewer Treatment Plant that is right here. Just gonna, if you've driven out that way. And the lovely Boone Lake right there. So what they would like to do is take this 3.14 acres and rezone it for private recreational use. Now, that does, where we are, kind of like, how would we do this? Should it be something super simple?
Preston, would you mind shutting the back doors? Thank you.
And this is just to kind of give you an idea of their site plan, of what it's going to look like. Because what they're asking for is planned business. And that might sound a little bit interesting, but we're going to talk about that. So as their concept plan, they have some pads here, some AstroTurf, but really no permanent structures. There may end up being, I think there's some decking that they're thinking about doing, but any kind of structure that they would need to have would also need to have like permits from TVA. Why they're going PB is because, in the staff report, is that this is one where it does allow for amusement, but because of some other requirements in different districts, they would need to put in a sidewalk. And as a private use in an outerlying area of the county, on an edge of our city area, a sidewalk is not necessarily something that is necessarily needed. So the current use is just vacant. The future use is for industrial. It's highly unlikely that an industrial zone or it's going to be developed industrially. So simply put, there's some pictures out here where you can see they've already done some improvements. We have heard from some of the neighbors that the improvements to the property have been appreciated. Just so you, in case you didn't get a chance to drive out there, this is kind of what it looks like across the street. We did have a neighborhood meeting. Staff recommends approval because it will be, it's a kind of an interesting use of a small piece of property along the lake. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
So PB is the only way, the only practical way to allow them to use it privately?
Yes.
Without requiring the sidewalk.
Without requiring a sidewalk.
So are you foregoing any kind of paved parking as well?
Because it's private, yes.
Yes,
Because, yeah,
foregoing
I mean, unless through a permit process they needed, something at the apron. They may make some, if you've driven out there, they may make some of their own improvements. Just if they're going to bring RVs, the applicants are here. They can tell you more about that.
I have a question on what stops that from becoming more public use? For example, we've got Elizabeth now planning to enhance the rivers in terms of rafting trips. So we want to get more of an intensity of rafting
Uvi,
trips.
would you mind speaking into the
sorry.
microphone? They just can't hear you.
Well, we're going to
Thank you.
get more rafting trips coming down beyond the trout fishing trips that are coming down the river. And if they sell this property and it's supposedly for private use, what's to stop anybody from invoking the PB ordinance to use it in a public way for a convenience store, a beer store,
Yeah.
whatever?
Similar to any concept plan, They would have to come in for a concept plan amendment.
And TVA controls how much on the shore itself?
Yes, and
Do you
I
know
need to.
approximately?
Yes, because I'm going to quote the 1390 line. They would have anything, they would control anything in that 1390 line.
I own 24 acres, just half a mile down. I know those regulations pretty well. As a matter of fact, the 1390 marker is on one of my head walls where a creek goes through. This is much higher up, but first of all, we should call it Watauga River, not Boone Lake, because there are two rapids before you get to Boone Lake.
It's labeled on our maps as Boone
Yeah,
Lake,
that's
so I'm
wrong.
going to
Get somebody to change it. But I think the key thing I'd be concerned about is just the use of a PB, which means business too. And is it possible, and let me interject something here. Daniel is a project manager on one of my clients' projects, so I'm abstaining for this, but I still want to ask questions. Is it possible that it could be used for other things like a trailer park?
No.
Okay.
It could not be used for a trailer park. I would have, because a mobile home park has a specific zoning. And so
So it's only for RVs?
yes.
Okay.
Because they would be temporary uses. Like it's also not one of those things that you could just permanently park an RV there either.
So there won't be water or hookups, electric hookups,
There may be some electric out at the site.
water, sewers there, right?
Water, sewers
So
there.
what prevents it from being permanent, even though it's not permanent?
That would be a zoning, we don't allow campgrounds, so even if it was, we don't allow campgrounds, and an RV is not an appropriate housing type in building code.
Thank you.
Additional questions of staff? Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing, allow the applicant to speak, and anybody else who may want to speak on this issue.
Just one section.
I'm not speaking. They have slides.
Ah,
Daniel gave me.
We've got photos.
okay.
That last one was tough to beat, so.
I like pictures.
You want to just open it from there?
Yes. Daniel Sahowski, 163 Chalk Creek Road. And, you know, we acquired this property after I was down there picking up trash. We live half mile down the road. And, you know, every day we'd see people dumping trash bags there. I mean, it was excessive to the point to where I stopped and started picking up trash. You know, I put a camera up on a tree to try to see if I could find out who was putting the trash out so we could do something about it. And it come to find out that the owner of it saw me out there, and he was a friend of ours as well, and he said, take this property off our hands. You know, we're tired of picking up trash. And, you know, we did. And, you know, 15, 16 truckloads later full of trash, you know, we started getting cleaned up. And it was like once you would get down to the bottom of it, you think you were done, then you'd see another 3 or 4 bags of trash. So this property has come with a lot of hard work, and Ken Odom, my partner on the property, you know, we had 5, 6, 7 people out there a day, you know, for weekends at a time, cleaning up, getting them pizza. You know, everybody loves the movers. Bait and switch, come over for pizza and beer and help us clean up. So what I'll do here is I just want to pull up a couple pictures. You know, first, you know, the overgrowth there was excessive, and that allowed for traffic to come in. That allowed for people to come in and camp overnight, you know, do drugs there and stuff like that. The police were always there. It was a serious issue there in that area for the neighbors and also for the people around. So just quickly, you know, it looks like just an overgrown wooded area. You know, with the river, it's beautiful. You know, if you have river property, if you're around there, you want to see the river. You don't want to see trash. You don't want to see campsites. That's not what we were after. So the more we started to clean it up, you know, we enjoyed taking our family out there. We enjoyed having friends out there. We had cookouts. You know, the water's accessible. We kayak up and down, and we work out kayaking up the river and back down. You know, we wanted a place to where we could bring our friends and family and just enjoy the river. You know, and so one of the neighbors there has football fields of AstroTurf. We managed to get some AstroTurf down there and, you know, lay it out where we could sit there and let kids play, our kids, you know, friends' kids, and just be able to enjoy the river, not have to worry about glass, not have to worry about trash and debris that they can get into. You know, so we brought in a skid steer and we mowed, just like any other property. You know, you're just mowing a lot of brush and a lot of thick stuff. You know, at the end of the day, we came up with what we think is a beautiful property. You know, that's just from clearing up. That was where everybody used to drive and just dump their trash. And now it's, you know, a clear lot that we're going to plant grass on and get it back to its original state. You know, and all this stuff was, you couldn't see from me to you, you know, and all this now is clear. I maintain it. I mow it every couple of weeks. You know, we can attest that traffic down there is a problem. Everybody has been there for 10, 15 years fishing, you know, and we have managed to control the amount of people that come down there, which, you know, it limits the trash on the river, and, you know, we're always continuing to improve it as well. And we don't allow guides to take out. We've been asked numerous times, we don't allow for guides or rafts to pull in or out there. That's not our intention at all. We want to keep it very private and something for our families to be able to pass down. You know, in this area here, you know, we mowed that last week. You know, it's not perfect, but for us, it's our own little piece of serenity. And our goal, you know, RV, maybe, you know, it's just for us, the first thing is to be able to get power, to be able to get water, okay? To be able to get an address so that way we can have emergency services if we do have an issue or somebody needs help on the river. You know, a big thing is too, is the river is growing. You know, there are 10, 15, 20 guide boats a day. There are rafters. You know, with what we've done is allowed easier access for first responders to be able to get to the river too. And, you know, we think that's important as well. You know, and we appreciate your consideration. So, you know, at the end of the day, we just hope to be able to get it rezoned so that we can enjoy it with our family and be able to put the basic necessities you would need to be able to pull in there, park. You know, if we do have a RV or a camper, it's temporary. You know, I think that's very clear that it can't be permanent, but we do want to be able to hook up temporary services. You know, a camper RV is self-sustaining. You know, there's no septic hookup or stuff like that. Power, water, we will need on site. So that's why we are going this route, to try to get it rezoned.
Thank you. Does anybody have a question of the applicant?
Thank you for your cleanup efforts.
Yeah,
thank
looks
you.
much nicer.
Well,
Yes,
Yep, fish there quite a bit.
all right,
Yes.
thank you.
thank you. Did anyone else wish to speak? Oh, no, you sat through this whole meeting. You get your say.
My name is Ken Odom. I'm at 1114 Waterbrook Lane, Johnson City, Tennessee. Met a few people out here, familiar faces. My goal is like the same thing like Daniel say. When I saw this property, when the lady, she was kind of getting older and she didn't have time to clean it up, Daniel said, let's get this place and clean it up and let's see it. First of all, I didn't want it because I can't see the 3 acre, I can't see the water. But then I said, where's it at? It's Watauga River. And why I fell in love with it because was a history there with the, my daughter was in homeschool for like the first semester last year. And we were going through this Watauga compacts and all the Watauga rivers. So that made me, I love tradition, just like I love Johnson City Country Club, 100-year tradition. That's where I came here for 22 years, grew up in San Diego, but my brother and I started Moto, so we feel like we pretty bond with this community here, and something that I'm not gonna be renting out, making business. My business selling food, but my employee can enjoy it, or our friends can enjoy it. Even the lady across the street, her name is, she called me one day, I told her it was in Karen's Hodge. She's about 100 acres on the other side of the river, but she don't have the time or the manpower to clean it up. So on the Labor Day, she called me, Ken, can I bring my grandkid and fish at your land? I said, why you got 100-something acres? Why do you want to use? Well, it's more accessible. It's beautiful. We try to make it nice and also keep it clean. Physical address is important to us because, you know, sometimes accidents and stuff, we might need 911 call because we don't know what address was it. Until I called her, she said, well, that's 920, I was 916. I think she told us 930, at 930, it's okay, 930. So we finally know what 930 is. We're not gonna go sell this property because I would like to die on this land and scratch my ashes right there on the river. You know, if I'm still alive, there's no way we're gonna sell it. So it's something for our family to use and also for our staff or our loved one to use. We're not gonna generate any money. That's not what we intend to, just for personal use only.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you have a great vision. All right, right, is anybody else who wishes to speak? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'll open up for discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. No, I can't. I'm abstaining. You abstain.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the rezoning at 930 Riverview Drive. Is there any discussion? Nicole, please call the question.
Commissioner Dagenhart?
Yes.
Commissioner Mays?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey?
Abstain.
Vice Chairman Cooper?
Yes.
Chairwoman Wild?
Yes.
Motion has been approved.
Hang on one second, Nicole, for the abstention, does that carry the majority?
Yes.
It does carry with the majority.
Yes, sir.
That's good to know, because
Sorry
there's
about
only
that, but
6
I-
of us.
Majority of the quorum.
Yes.
Is that what? No, I don't know.
We don't need to go grab Jenny.
'Cause that's right
We're
above,
good.
that's
We're
right
good.
above Brenda's.
All right.
Unless there's a statutory where you have to have so many, yeah. Yep.
I put you on the legislative committee, didn't I?
I don't know. I hope not.
I hope so.
Just for the record of those watching, and this will be going to the first reading on August 5th, second reading on August 19th, and third reading on September 2nd.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item number 3 of new business. This is rezoning number 1079, Optimist Park.
Okay. I'm looking for that button. So what we're looking at is rezoning some land on State of Franklin, West Market, Novus Drive, Sells Avenue from R4 to B4 and MS1. So going from a medium density residential to a planned arterial business and medical services. And this would be an extension of the node that already exists. So some city-owned land, it's 4 pieces of city-owned land and 2 pieces that are owned privately. And this is a city-initiated rezoning. Just to kind of give you an idea of what kind of current to future, what it has been vacant and for public use. Future, it looks to say that they wanted to extend this medical service node and keep the B4 closer to Market Street. And the city manager's office is looking to kind of change that just a little bit. But in essence, keeping to the same. I'm going to scroll you through some pictures in case you can stop anytime. Just so you know what you're looking at if you didn't get a chance to go out and see it. And that's my plug for the mountain. But this rezoning does have some policies and some efforts from the city that it would help fulfill. So it is encouraging infill development. It's also setting aside land for future commercial development. It's maintaining, this regional retail and experience center and helping to attract businesses and industries, and as well as promoting economic vitality in our community. We did hold a public hearing. There was no comment or no public in attendance, and staff recommends approval. Are there questions of staff?
Can you go back to the first slide again that just shows what we're rezoning to what? Okay. So starting kind of near the top left, to MS1, that and the 2B4, that is what was envisioned to be more of an extension of the medical.
Correct.
But that's not really happening in that area, so.
Yes.
Okay, and why the difference between MS1 and B4 there?
Why
not-
the difference?
Yeah, why not both of them to B4?
I would imagine that there is something that,
Well, to the north of it
To the-
is MS1.
yeah.
Is MS1? Okay.
And the city may have some sort of, because they would like to do this in order to kind of make a step for when they would want to sell the land.
Okay.
Am I speaking out of turn?
No, you're not
Okay.
speaking out of turn, but out of all fairness for Whitney, those were conversations that I held with the city manager. And you're exactly right, Jamie, that up to the north of the MS1, we already have MS1. And so there, we were looking for some continuity of the
Okay.
zoning. The other is that we felt that Novus Drive was, this is a new connector between State of Franklin and West Market. It helps alleviate congestion at this major interchange here, or this intersection here. Obviously, opening up opportunities for development on both sides of Novus. We felt that the extension of the B4 was really most appropriate on the east side of Novus. The only piece of property that's really open for development, because we don't foresee the
Yeah, how many people live there at the substation?
The substation going anywhere anytime soon. And so, right here on this left-hand side, making it continuous with the MS1 is a good transition away from the B4.
Thank you.
What you're going to see coming next is the text amendment that modifies the MS1, tweaks the MS1 just a little bit, but essentially allowing for the private market to be able to develop these two large tracts.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So on the MS1, there are design standards within the MS1, is that correct? But not in the B4,
Right, minimal, but
in terms of facade and material use?
those are typically in your overlay districts, in the DO or the.
But is it,
DO.
but isn't State of Franklin part of that?
It is. It is, so wherever you're in the overlay district,
Which would, it's about 300 feet-ish.
roughly.
Yeah.
So would it extend into that portion? No? Not really?
That is not really to scale to me, but
That's my concern, if you have, because you're gonna have an overlay, you won't have an overlay on the
Oh,
market.
you know what, right here it is. There's the overlay. That's-
So,
So it won't, so the overlay won't extend, the overlay is here.
right,
So it won't extend into that MS1
but
portion?
does it, I guess my question is that there's not an overlay on West Market though, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's right
Right
here.
here,
The other dotted line,
that dotted line.
and you got two of them.
So they're gonna be bookend, okay. I guess my, for continuity purposes, should we move that overlay to match the road boundary? Because you're gonna have a,
The overlay is by ordinance coming off of State of Franklin.
and West Market, and now you have a gap in between there that doesn't have the same design code.
You could not do that with this action. That would be a separate, because it acts like like an onion layer. So.
I understand,
yeah.
or should we do the overlay first?
No, so
Why
we
are
would
you
need to
concerned
do
about
the
that?
underlying.
Because it's kind of like in zoning where you create a donut hole, now we have a donut hole of overlay.
There's not any overlay going
It's
back this
continuous.
way.
Yeah.
Two different overlays.
On State of Franklin, there
Yeah,
is.
there's
Yeah, but it
overlay
follows the
along.
road.
Yeah, it follows the road and then it follows this road.
The
Exactly.
overlay-
So
the
do you
overlay-
not see the wedge there in the middle that's not part of an overlay?
Well, but that exists at every intersection of overlay cars.
Overlay.
Yeah, we've got Roan Street, anytime the roads cross.
Yeah,
I get it, I understand it.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
no,
it's
I
an
understand
overlay.
where he's coming
You
from.
sh- You should take it down Novus Road or whatever. You should,
well, it's more of a sightline issue. Now,
Pull back up
and
the
in this
presentation.
case, you may be right, that you could see a piece of, a building up on,
well, it's on a knoll.
it'd be up on that knoll, you could see it, that's true.
I think-
That's kind of, boy, that'd be a can of
understand
worms.
where you're coming from. I think, though, that this is a bigger conversation, and that is, which is really kind of ironic that you bring this up, because Peyton and I were in a meeting the other day regarding building materials and other design standards, and this is a text amendment that's going to be coming to you all here soon. So there's a design standard conversation that we will be having soon. As that relates to the overlays, not only by ordinance, but by policy, have been applied to our major corridors. So it's kind of interesting that Phil talked about the major arterials and those major corridors earlier. Those overlays are most appropriate along those corridors. If we begin arbitrarily just widening or extending the overlays that are by policy over these major corridors onto side streets, we're making a pretty big shift in how we apply that at a policy level. So I think that's another conversation we need to have, and one we can have as part of the design standards that Peyton and I will be bringing to you. Does that help?
It does help. I understand the logic, but I can also see that we have two different design overlays that are probably two different building materials.
No, sir.
On West Market in the state of Franklin?
Well, they might be now, but the state has adopted a bill that now impacts how we can regulate building materials, and that's in the queue.
Okay, so all right.
So we're not there yet, but the city manager's office has asked us to do this rezoning for the purpose of allowing the city to offload this surplus land. But in the queue, right behind this, is a whole conversation on design standards and building materials.
Okay, that's good. We need that.
Thanks to Nashville.
Okay. Sorry, I just see that and it kind of looks like it makes sense.
That's weird.
Okay, so I'm right a little bit.
Yeah, we'll humor you.
Thank you. Just give me something.
And I had one question.
Yes, sir.
We noticed that the owners are the City of Johnson City, the Brummett property, and Deborah Wilson. Is there any conflict at all in terms of us rezoning this for the other than Johnson City people in this, in terms of enhancement of value of property by rezoning?
Well, okay, that's a two-part question. Yes, the city can rezone other people. It's one of the powers of the city. Secondly, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't feel like I am, but I could be. If it's vacant, that is not going to affect the property value, the zoning layer.
Okay.
It's when development comes, or just a general appraisal, but not necessarily the zoning layer. Am I speaking out of turn? Okay.
I just have a
Disagree with
concern.
that. If something's zoned,
Could it, could,
yeah,
could
agriculture, and
improve
then
the
suddenly
value.
it's own business, I think it's worth a lot more.
It's,
Is it still based on a vacant piece of land?
I mean,
The worth is ultimately determined by the market. It's not being determined by the city. And so, but the city can and does often zone property for economic development purposes. And so you've got, all of this land is currently zoned residential. Used to be Optimist Park. Optimist Park, there was a front page article in the paper about this the other day, and the Assistant City Manager, Charlie Stahl, was interviewed by David Floyd. I thought Charlie's comments were fantastic because it gave some of the history of Optimist Park, why Optimist Park began to slowly be deprogrammed and then ultimately decommissioned. And so you have this now surplus land that's zoned residential. It is not likely to be developed in a residential fashion. And so it's appropriate for the city to act in this capacity to say, it's time for us to offload this surplus land, but before we do that, it's appropriate for us to apply the most reasonable zoning classification. Does that add value? It does, but ultimately the market will be adding the value.
Are the other two owners, were they involved in the application process at all, or is it just the city?
my knowledge, it's just the city. They were notified
They were
as, yeah,
notified,
they
yeah.
were notified as, you know, property owners and
Right.
adjoining property owners that this was happening.
Did they acknowledge receipt of that notification? Do we?
I have not
Are
received
the
anything.
other owners aware of this?
They, well, to our knowledge, they are aware of it. Deborah Wilson, we believe, is aware of it based on the letter being sent. Bob Brummett, who owns the Brummett Company, who owns the shopping center where the Publix is, he and I had a long conversation about this, and he was thrilled that this is happening because he thought his driveway was already B4.
Okay.
And so I will note that the piece of property that is owned by Ms. Wilson is this little rectangle right here. You'll note that her building, Guy Wilson and Deborah Wilson, owned this building right here, which is this parcel. I'm going out on a limb here. They probably also don't realize that this last little bit is zoned residential, since the rest of their parcel is zoned B4.
Gotcha, okay, thank you. Are there additional questions of staff?
That's fine.
Okay, is there anybody that wished to speak on this? Okay. All right, then I am open for additional discussion or a motion on the matter.
So was that an open and a close of the public?
That was
hearing?
an open and a
And a clo-
close,
okay.
all in one.
I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Nicole, please call the vote.
Commissioner Dagenhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlik,
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
and Chairwoman Watts.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay. Moving on to item number 4 under new business. This is a text amendment, changes to the MS1 Medical Services District approved uses.
So in this rezoning, or in this petition with Optimist Park, the city also asked us, or the city administration asked us to look at the uses in this district. Because one of the things is to think about adding multifamily and would that be appropriate? So I've done an analysis of cities that are our size or cities that are a little bit larger of what that looks like and what it could happen. What is in your staff report is to add the multifamily and take out single family. We'll get to that. And if you're adding multifamily, to make it comparable to the RO, I believe it's, I've just lost my train of thought. The RO1, yeah, because that's about 14 units an acre. And that is also, at least in this particular area, very close. But this would apply to more than just one. I'm going to come back to that. Any text amendment would apply to anything in the MS1. And so that is what this is over here. This is where this text amendment could apply. What we would also like to consider, so to speak, while we have the hood open, is to take out single family. One of the reasons for single family would be churches are allowed and parsonages would be a single family use. There are 2 churches that are in MS1 and neither have a single family house associated with their church, or if they do, it is in a different district. The other would be to take out gasoline service stations. They are allowed in other districts. There has not been one built in the MS1, so it kind of would be more appropriate to kind of stick to some of that, we're really going for medical services. Now, why would we add multifamily? To basically, because if you're thinking of how we are trying to attract certain industries, being able to live close and to have that type of housing close is an advantage. This district already allows for some residential in hotels and motels. This would be less transient and would be for we're envisioning, it could be anything, but we're envisioning that it would be something where you could live and work very close to one another, or live and study very close to one another. I just want to take a moment to applaud the GIS department that rarely gets applause because they're never up here. But they're really great at putting together data, and they did a lot of work in this text amendment. And of creating maps, getting data of where the uses are. But this is just to kind of show you where that could happen. There are plans and policies that support that when it comes to economic vitality in the strategic plan. And then promoting, I would say the big one here is promoting responsive development regulations. And so getting into some proactive work and saying this might be something that we need to take a look at. This did not need a does not need a neighborhood meeting, so I don't have that.
So blue is going in and red is coming out?
Yes, in your text amendment. Oh. The red that's coming out, that is from the text amendment on the substance abuse clinics.
Will approval of this change make anything that already exists in MS1 non-conforming?
I would love to tell you that I could have a crystal ball and I've scrubbed every piece of property, but yet, if there's something we missed, it could possibly make something non-conforming. It's not intentional that it makes something non-conforming. That was trying to alleviate any of those.
Thank you.
But I do think you already addressed it because you did the analysis on the churches and the
Yeah.
single family and on the
Gas stations, yeah.
So it should.
Okay. All right. Are there additional questions of staff?
So the way this is written, there could be an apartment house in MS1.
Yes.
Freestanding apartment house.
Yes.
Okay.
So in the case of the rezoning map to the right, if an apartment wanted to come there, they could. Or if it was part of this development, it could be not just an apartment, it could be,
Could be a second-story loft,
yes.
for example.
It just
Could it be one loft? It could it? Multifamily, it'd have to be more than one loft. Okay. All right.
What's the difference between MS1 and the other planned district, planned business?
The B4 or the,
Well, what's there, I mean, it seems like it's close to a couple of other ones, correct?
yes, I mean, it's some office, but it would allow for, it really focuses on medical kinds of things. And so it kind of dumps a lot of that emphasis into there.
Okay. But there's a lot of other uses permitted in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's support uses.
Right.
Yes.
Additional questions of staff? Okay, is there anybody who wishes to speak on this matter? I will open and close the public hearing then.
I have one other question.
Certainly.
Would you say the majority of the MS1 is or are within overlays? Design overlays?
Look at it like it from that map.
North State of Franklin, North State of Franklin. West Market. I guess my question is, do they have to be conforming to those overlays? The design standards?
Yes, they would, any overlay, any parcel would have to be conforming to the overlay.
Even if it's multifamily housing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Some on Princeton Road not being the overlay.
Just so that everyone can hear. Will said, there's some on Princeton Road at home that would not be in the overlay.
Thanks, sir. Interesting. All right, I'm done.
Okay, and I am open for either additional discussion or a motion on the matter.
I move that we accept the staff's proposed changes to MS1 Medical Services District to allow multifamily use and remove single-family and gas stations.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the text amendment changes to the MS1 district. Is there any further discussion? Nicole, please call the question.
Commissioner Dagenhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich,
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
Chairwoman Wild.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right. The last item under our new business is the Willow Springs Estate Subdivision Final Plat. It looks like Will's gonna be up. Give Whitney a break.
Go home, John.
No, Whitney's had a long night.
Yeah. Good job, Whitney.
Yes.
Chairwoman Wild, Vice Chairman Cooper, and probably been saying this for the last time. And thank you for your service. It's really been a pleasure working with you the
Pleasure.
past
Been an
couple of
honor.
years, especially when it up here more routinely doing rezonings and annexations. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and I know past staff with the song and Matt both thought very highly of you. So sad to see you go. Thank you for everything you've done for the community. Fellow commissioners, this is final plat approval for the Willow Springs Estate. This is a Washington, this property's in Washington County, so it's Washington County plat. This document that I have here is the final, if you approve it, it's the final plat. The one that you received in your packet was still a bit preliminary. It did not have the TDEC stamp. TDEC stamp has to be applied to any lots that are under 5 acres, which would apply to lots 2, 3, 5, and 6. You can see that the TDEC stamp has been applied since the packet went out. This is a 6-lot subdivision intended for future single-family development in Washington County. This is located at the intersection, or near the intersection of Antioch Road and Justice Drive, and Willow Springs Park is just a bit to the west, and we'll see that on the last slide that I have here. City water is available, city sewer is not. The TDEC stamp is on there. The lots all meet site distance requirements. You can see the surrounding zoning. This is it's intended for single-family use. You can see it's adjoining other single-family districts. Lots meet all the requirements of the Washington County Zoning Code and city subdivision regulations. Minimum lot size for lots that have public water and private sewer is a half acre. All the lots are well over that size, and we recommend approval of the final plat.
I think there was a note about percolation. Have they been able to confirm?
Yes, yes, all lots have perked, and that's indicative of this stamp that's been stamped by TDEC. Yes, sir.
Additional questions of staff?
I move we approve the
Oh, wait,
plat.
I have to open a public hearing.
Oh, do you?
Before you can do that, I believe.
Okay.
Just, I have to ask.
Okay,
I'm
go
so
for it.
sorry.
Excuse me.
Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this matter? We do have someone.
We do?
Yes.
Oh, yes, beg your pardon, sir.
I'm on overtime now.
You sat through this whole meeting.
The good thing is, I'm going by hourly rates. I'm John Mize. I'm the surveyor on this job for Bill Burris, who is the owner. And he's got this, purchased this property and dividing it up into these 6 lots. The back lots are 7.2 acres plus in size. And as Will was talking about the TDEC, you know, anything over 5 acres, you don't have to have the perk or the soils testing done. But we went ahead and chose, just for his selling of the properties, that everything is good, everything perks. So we went ahead and paid for the whole thing and got it all approved. So, but the lots Mr. Burris has also put in his covenant of restrictions, he's putting in 100 feet front setback instead of the 30 that's required. He's wanting to push the houses back, opens up the area, makes a lot better looking development. And, you know, the housing just to our right is, you know, 60, 70-foot lots. You know, they're small houses put on there, but these will be bigger, upper scale type housing, as is across the road from us. So it's going to be a real nice development and everything, and I'll entertain questions.
The only question I have is I need you to state your address for the
Oh.
public record, please.
My address is 690 Cross Community Road, Bluntville, Tennessee,
Thank you.
or as we say, Bluenville.
All right, does anybody have any questions for the survey?
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate your being here and sitting
being
through this.
patient.
Yes, through this long meeting. Sorry you were the last item there. All right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, then I will officially close the public hearing, and Chris,
I'll make a
you're on.
motion to accept the plat and approve the plat as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the Willow Springs Estates subdivision final plat. Is there any further discussion? Nicole, please call the roll.
Commissioner Dagenhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich,
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
Chairwoman Wild.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. Have a good evening. Okay, moving on to other items. The first one is something I had asked staff to provide, and that was a update on the West Walnut Street construction. This came about from the recent articles in the newspaper talking about this, and so I know 3 of us were on the commission when this was first presented and approved, the West Walnut Street. And so I just wanted to get an update on any potential changes that may have occurred since that time.
Madam Chair, Commission, I actually would ask that we be able to give you a more in-depth, comprehensive update at the next meeting. And here's the main reason why. I was hoping Phil would be able to stay with us for this part, but that's a lot asking him to stick around until the end of the meeting. The other is that there are still a number of moving pieces in terms of finalizing construction contracts and when the project will let, and a number of moving pieces still. And so if you would allow us to bring you a more comprehensive report at the next meeting, it would be much appreciated.
That is absolutely fine with me.
This will be a large and lengthy project, and so I think that I would ask that just 30 days would not impact.
No. And please make sure that it's not a large and lengthy agenda when you're going to present this.
Happy to.
Large and lengthy update as well.
Happy to.
Thank you. No, appreciate it. No problem. We'll put that off to next month.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Our second item under other. Planning Commission and city staff want to recognize and thank Vice Chairman Cooper for his many years of service. I think it's been 6 on this commission, and dedication to the Johnson City Regional Planning Commission. You are going to be sorely missed.
You're very kind. Thank you. Oh, goodness. Thanks. It's been an honor.
Thank you very much. Definitely.
We have here
Oh, Lord.
of appreciation for you, and honestly, I was gonna make some remarks, but there are no more beautiful remarks than what Mr. Ryder said.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I concur wholeheartedly.
There's no way to restate that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're going to miss you. You're going to be a tough act to follow.
Come on now.
It is true. It is true. So,
Madam Chair, if it's okay, I just have one other item.
Sure.
I am very pleased and excited to be able to introduce you all to our new planner. Sitting here to my right is Peyton Voren. Peyton comes to us from Greenville, South Carolina, not originally, and I want her to be able to give just a little 1-2 on herself. So I'm putting you on the spot, if that's okay. But she's coming up to us from Greenville. She was interning with the city of Greenville, South Carolina, after wrapping up her master's in Clemson. And so Will and Keisha, some other Clemson folks in the city, are very excited to have another Clemson Tiger in the workforce. So very excited with Peyton's energy and her passion. She's now been here, hadn't been 2 weeks, and she was here not even a full week last week because of the holiday. And on Friday of last week, she was saying, Preston, you know, I've got my zoning code, I've got my subregs, I've got this, that, and the other. I've got my Outlook set up, you know, got my GIS map set up. Now give me something to do. And so I love it. So do you mind just saying a couple words, saying hello to the Planning Commission?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Preston did put me on the spot. He did not tell me about this. But yes, hi, I'm Peyton. I just graduated from Clemson with my master's in city and regional planning, and I am so excited to work with you guys. I mean, really, I did go up to Preston. I was like, can I like do something? You know, I'm like, I'm ready. Give me something. So yes, I'm very excited to meet all of you.
Well,
Welcome
welcome to the
aboard.
team.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
Very happy to
Hope
have you.
Preston's glad to have you.
Yes.
Very,
I think
very.
Will's glad to have her.
Yeah.
All of us are.
I think we all are.
Yeah.
You know, she also immediately, and like I said, hadn't even been 2 weeks, and she has immediately melded in with the team. She is just instantly become part of the family, and that's been fantastic. She will be the principal liaison to the Historic Zoning Commission, just like Mr. Manley was. So she's excited about jumping on that ship. And Kelly Duggan, our consultant, who was running historic preservation, who has since moved to Baton Rouge, but continues to help us from a distance in terms of the rewrite of the Tree Streets guidelines. Kelly and Peyton have already made contact and are working together on transitioning Peyton into that role as the staff liaison to the HCC. But in addition to that, just like Matt was doing, she will be bringing items to you all as well. And so she's excited about some of the legislative work in terms of the building materials and design guidelines or design standards. So she will very much be a face in front of this board as well.
We're very glad to have her. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, is there any other business that you need to address? All right, hearing none, meeting is adjourned. We're gonna miss you all.